Hey, welcome to my channel. This is Brett Tadlock, TN Artist. Make sure to join me on Facebook, Twitter, leave a like and subscribe. If you really like my artwork, you can visit it on Etsy and support me over there as well. So, wanted to get started with some cool stuff here. So let's jump right into it and let's get started.
Okay, so I figured before we got completely into the paint along, I wanted to show you and discuss a couple of quick things about Artrage that's going to make this easier for you to do this. So one of the things you'll hear me talk about in the video I recorded is using the custom brush, which is right here, using the oil brush on occasion, stencils, and but I wanted to show you a few other things like this sticker spray, for example. Artrage has a lot of custom tools built into it, so that's why I don't tend to make too many custom brushes. I've got one really that I made that I used off and on, but for the most part I tend to use just what's in Artrage because it's designed for artists, specifically for painters and people that want to mess around digitally but use traditional methods more so than Photoshop. Photoshop is really adapted to do that, but it's kind of more an advanced way of doing it for a lot of people. So for somebody starting out, it can be really daunting, whereas this is, it has a huge amount of functionality, but it's simplified. So I wanted to show you that to kind of help explain some of that real quick before we jump into the other part of the video. Some of the things I referenced. So the first thing is going to be the custom brush right here. If you go to custom brush, for me, I've got it set to where I just hit Z and it kicks me over to it. So if you go to presets, you have a lot of different ones in here. Everything from artistic, which are all these different types of brushes, and some silly ones in here and there, some spatter brushes, square canvas, watery, and so forth. So some of those work really well. One thing I will tell you that I have noticed, okay, these brushes do work fantastic. They work for, like, for example, if you're trying to do hair or something like that, if it's, you know, if you're trying to do portrait, they work really well. And actually, let me switch to something you can see a little better here. What I've done on the background here, by the way, is this is just kind of a really dark green that I wanted to paint on top of to show you this. So I'm painting directly on this. This is like, if, for example, in a Bob Ross video, if you were painting straight on the, like when he coats a canvas in black gesso and then he puts a color over top of it, that's kind of what I'm doing here. So I'm going to jump over and make a new layer on top of it because the paint that I'm painting is actually interacting with that. So I make a new layer. This is like I'm painting on a fresh, clean layer now, and it's going to give me, if I switch my color back, it's going to give me a very, you know, just regular painting. So this is painting on top, so like the bottom layer was dry. Anyway, the point is that I wanted to show you these bristles work really well for simulating brush strokes. Okay. You can get some really nice effects out of it. You can put in some nice waves or just different things and then really build it up. However, there's one thing I wanted to show you real quick that has gotten better with Artrage, and they're still working. I've got a pretty good system here, you know, but one of the things is that if you build these out too much, they can have some issues with delay. This isn't doing it too bad, actually, which is kind of funny that I'm trying to show you this and it's not doing it. But these brushes, because basically a brush is just recreating the same image over and over. So anyway, the ones that I've seen that tend to be the worst with it are usually these bristle brushes. That's why I kind of wanted to show you that. But it's working just fine now, so never mind. Okay, so blenders are other ones that work really well for, just like what it said, these are mainly for blending the colors, so you can have a lot softer scrub ends and everything else. You actually can't even see what I'm doing here because of the way it's designed. If I had multiple colors here, but anyway, that's, so a lot of different ones is the point I want to make. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but there are a bunch of different ones that you can play around with and get different textures built up. And these can work really well for building up textures for other things like you want to, but the main thing I wanted to show you has to do with doing like a Bob Ross type painting. So let me show you some other things here real quick. So if you jump down to textured, you have these different ones like lumpy lichen and all that. Then you jump down to textures, and you can see that's one of my new ones, one of my ones that I have. I actually have two in here. One is a kind of a soft brush like that one, And then the other one is this bush brush that I made specifically to try and make bushes. So this is a little large. So if I bring that down, I can use it for just building up some quick bushes, and it's not bad, you know. But anyway, using the ones that are here is kind of what I want to discuss. And I keep saying that, so now I'm going to go back to it and show you. So if I'm using these, like it has these curls that are in it, which can be built up. Okay, it has curly bush, you know, which that sounds like a really bad movie. Anyway, so those are a little bit softer for the way it's built up, but you see it's building it up in the area, so I don't tend to use that one too much. And oops, let me fix that. So the other thing here, hang on, I deleted my layer by accident. Come back layer, there we go. But the ones I tend to use the most for these that you'll hear me use are going to actually scroll down here, and you'll see a couple of different ones. You'll see particles and pores, and then lichen. Lichen is the one I tend to use quite a bit. When it's blown up like this, it's basically making these circles, see? But when it's smaller, so for example, let's do smaller here, you can build some of these out to get some nice edges for bushes, but these particles work really well for the same kind of thing for bushes. And so you can start making in some trees. And I know this is probably making really annoying noises, but you can see how it builds up, and you can build it. Some of these are square, some of these are a little closer together. But anyway, these particle ones are the ones that I tend to use for doing repeating Bob stuff on here, and it can show you. So that's some of the ones you'll hear me talk about it and see it and kind of play around with it. And again, these react differently since they're on top of different things. And, you know, there are other ones here that work really well. Some of these are just kind of weird and silly, but basically the main thing I want to get across here is just play around with some of this stuff. See, I'm getting some, see, I got some lag there. So touch, let go, and it keeps moving. So it really kind of depends which ones are going to give you the grief of doing it. By the way, I'm holding Control-Z down and undoing all these so I can get a clearer idea of showing you stuff. And I'll do these a little bit more. All right, so that's the one I tend to use the most, the Control-Z, the oil brush. I tend to use the Everlasting Oil for it because it keeps going, and you can use it to react very similar to how an oil does. It drags through it and can give you some really nice textures. I also tend to use the ink tool for doing like if I'm doing limbs, for example. So like if I'm drawing a tree and I want to have some limbs, this is a quick way to do it because you get that really nice flowing ink style. You can play around with these over here, and some of them are set to give you smooth. It'll smooth itself out. Some of these don't smooth at all. Some of them are set to, again, smooth and stuff. So you'll hear me play with the inking tool a lot for doing brushes, doing limbs and stuff. And then the final one I wanted to show you here are these stamps. So this is the sticker spray tool right here, and it has a whole bunch of different things built into these nature stamps, these just silly ones like fireballs, a whole bunch of different things. So why don't I use these more often? I mean, it's got like a bush brush, and it's got all these other things. These can work, but the main thing you need to understand is that versus the custom tool, the custom paintbrush is it is actually painting. The sticker spray tool is stamping. So if I'm using like this bush brush, you see it is just rotating a stamp that it's going to keep. Now here's the funny thing, if I keep holding it on it, it'll just keep doing it over and over. And I'm not pushing or doing anything else different, I'm just keeping the cursor held. That's kind of cool and can be used for a lot of things and building up textures really quick. It can also get away from you really quick. But that's why I don't tend to use it. Shrink this down a little bit. because it is just creating the same image over and over and over versus like the other one does. So anyway, it again can work. You know, it can give you some stuff. Like, see how that's kind of going there. It can make some nice brush strokes, if you will, but it does tend to stamp. Now there are a few down here that I wanted to show you, like this mossy one. This mossy one can work really great for giving you some nice varied texture. You do want to turn the shadow off. So notice the difference. I don't know if you can see the difference there. Let me try and zoom in just a little bit. So here you can see shadow area right in here. Let me bring this down. Actually, let me grab the pen. So see the shadow right there. It's on smoothing, sorry. So there's some shadow in here, but where the one I did second right there does not have any. So by turning the shadow off, you can get some really interesting bushes. Okay, it still does play with the hue, with the value a little bit, so you get some nice variations. So that one's a decent one to play around with for doing bushes. Mossy too can be the same thing. Again, you probably want to go in and turn the shadow off, so you can build up kind of a mossy, darker one. So you want a really darker kind of lay down of color. Can give you some nice stuff. Then go over it with a little bit of highlight and stuff. So you can really start building up some textures, is my point. The main thing is cutting off that shadow. And then there's other ones in here. There's pebbles and a shrub brush, a shrubbery. So no shrubbery. This one works great too. Again, you want to make sure the shadow's off. And you can use this for doing some stuff as well for 3D type things. This is Brush 3D, which means basically it has the shadow set up a little differently in it. But again, you can play around, do a darker one. But see how it kind of sits on top of it, and it looks different, so I wouldn't probably use it like that. There are leaves in here that you can do for trees. And you kind of build those up, but again, you've got that shadow, so you probably want to turn the shadow off. And then just kind of build it out. It is random for how it goes in, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. So there's that. And then finally, you've got the tree shrub right there, which again can be used nicely. So I don't tend to use that one as much because to me it looks fake. So these other ones up through here can be used. Wheat, on the other hand, is also another one. I have used this in some stuff in the background, and it works fairly well. So as long as you're just like using it as a primary, and here and there, it can work for building up some texture and giving you that kind of that look. And then you can go in and play around with it with the knife tool and really kind of mess it up and stuff. So anyway, so the main reason I wanted to show you these things is so that you have some reference of how to use them. Try and really use the tools like they are here. Don't get hung up on the, what tool was that one and what settings? What were your settings in Brush and which one did you use and was it a custom and blah, blah, blah. Just paint, man. Just have some good time and paint. So that's the important part of this. Anyway, tell you what. Why don't we jump into the actual painting itself? And I recorded this earlier, but hopefully it'll give you some ideas. And then on the next one, I may dive a little bit deeper into stencils. So thanks so much for this part of it. Let's jump to the next part.
Okay, so here is the actual paint along. This was done really along with Bob. However, the funny thing was I actually had it muted, so I couldn't see what I couldn't hear what he was doing. I could see it, but I was actually talking with somebody else and some friends and painting this while we were talking. We were doing kind of a paint along. So in what he had done in it was that he had in the back of it some black gesso that he had painted and then allowed to fully dry, and from there was getting ready to build everything out. So what I had to do here to try and catch up real quick was paint in the gesso and be able to get it done and laid out. And the next part of it was in the back there, that bluish gray was some distant trees that he had in his. It wasn't quite working for me, so I just decided to leave it. And then I took yellow, kind of an Indian yellow, and some brown colors as well, and started tapping those on using those same ZBrush tools as well, and then the ink tool to draw on some trees. This is sped up a little bit just because I wanted to be able to show you it a little bit faster. So again, went back to the yellowish green color and some yellow and started going back over the trees to lay in some of the foliage in the background. So that's what I'm doing here, is just tapping it in using the particle brush now to do what will be the grassy area, and try and get the way that looks so that it can, kind of have the contours of the land and everything else. Like I said, I was just watching him. I couldn't hear exactly what all he was doing or what he was planning, so I just kind of went with it. But you can see the particle brush does give you some nice grassy type texture. This is the bristle brush that I'm using from the custom brush as well. Those ones that I was telling you that should usually lag, but they weren't. So what I'm doing there is going vertical to give that reflected water look as well, and trying to lay that all out. So the next thing I'm going to start doing from here after I get all this laid out is laying in kind of some dirt on the side for a path and another little grassy area as well. But the main thing with these is that you really want to go a little bit more vertical than what I did and get the look of it. So I want to push all that back like he was doing. So I started laying in some extra foliage and then some different water reflection marks using the marker tool, which I didn't go over that one too much, but the marker tool, using it to lay out the shoreline, and then taking the oil brush and laying in some color and then smearing it back with the marker tool. It gives kind of that same look that Bob gets with his palette knife, and trying to get that laid out a little bit with it. And then take the marker tool with a lighter color and scribbling some reflective lines over the water that gives that nice quality of like ripples and stuff in the water as well. He started putting in more trees, so I started doing the same, and some ink tool to do the limbs again as well, and then some marker to kind of blend it in. Use the marker tool and the oil brush to add some highlights on the trees, and then going back and adding in even more. On his, it looked like he was starting to do some Spanish moss type stuff in the trees, so I was looking to do that as well, and adding some foreground stuff. Still hated that tree in the background, so I was trying to push it back a little bit and add in some different textures and leaves like his had. Then I switched over to stencils because I'd reached the part that he had done. Now I wanted to add in some of my own stuff as well. I like using these stencils that I've made. I'll show you how to do that in another one. I've got a video already showing how to make stencils, but I'll do it again just to kind of give you an updated view. But the nice thing about it is that I have these shapes that I've painted or taken pictures and turned into stencils. And then with that, I can really go back and forth and push. This was painted primarily on one layer. So I normally build up these backgrounds and stuff on multiple layers, so that way I can paint under them if I don't like how something looks, instead of trying to go in and force this around everything else. But by using these stencils, I can stretch them, twist them, turn them, and start laying in some different looks and feels for everything else. Everything from refining reflections in the water to the background. And then I kind of got here and I thought, okay, I'm going to add some bark. So I want that palette knife kind of look. So I just took some rock textures, stretched it, and then kind of contorted it onto the tree and everything else as well. So, and then added some little bit of blue in the background to hint at some clouds, some negative painting of blue for the clouds up there. And then again, decided I really hated these trees, so I wanted to go in and change that background some more. So just a real quick paint along with Bob and kind of doing it and showing you some of my techniques as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. If it may have been a little too quick, I don't know. I can do the next one more real time if needed. But make sure to leave any comments below, like and subscribe. Come visit on Facebook if you haven't already, and would love to have you participate in the community there as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch, and I look forward to making some more of these soon because I'm really enjoying this. So thanks so much.